ba-dum, da-ga-dee-dum, da-dum, dee-da, da, 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 da-da, da-da, dee-ga-dee-dum, da-dum, dee-dee, dee, 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 dee-dee, boo-boo, ba-ba-dee-doo, dee-doo, dee-da, da, 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 da-doo. Boom boom, ba-ba-doo, doo-doo, dee-da, da, 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 da. Triskaidekaphobia by the wonderful Biff Smith. Couldn't actually quite snap and navigate the internet windows with my left hand. Let's do it one more time. That time I couldn't blame it. That's just a rhythm thing. But you know what? It's hard to play in 13. But we shall together here today. Pop-up storytelling hour on this Friday, this Venus's day, this Friday the 13th. If you're into that whole Gregorian calendar trip. And so we wear flowers on the shirt, but I'm also wearing black, And in this not so beautiful thumbnail I made, we see mother cradling baby Jason, hockey mask and all. All right, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Triskaidekaphobia, fear of the number 13th. We're going to talk about Paraskevidekatriaphobia, fear of Friday the 13th. What's it all about? And, some would say I should stay in my lane. So we'll get there, which would be the sacred astronomy of the thing and this temple of the Guiddess. And I mean, when I say temple, not just a place for reverence, but also time. And time and space are intimately married, or on Friday the 13th, maybe we should just say, in bed together. Should we try this thing again? Anyway, Triskaidekaphobia, which means the fear of the number 13. My favorite teacher in high school was a beautiful man named Biff Smith. Who has moved on to the next place quite recently. So honoring Biff today. And wondering also about this other great para or phobia so many have, the fear of death, But Biff was a wonderful piano player and composer. My senior year in high school, actually, on some days of the week, maybe Fridays, I don't know. Biff was my teacher 3 times during that day in jazz improvisation and also in like jazz band and English AP, where Biff was quite cool. Interestingly, Anna and I have recently relocated. We're in Berkeley now. We're kind of still in the relocation, and we're living in a place called Poets Corner, and the cross street of Curtis is Chaucer. And that had me also kind of remembering Biff Smith, because Chaucer's Canterbury Tales were something that we read in his class. I'm not sure if that was senior year or what, and you don't care. But I'll say, and it's going to be too much info, I guess, we also read Tom Robbins' Another Roadside Attraction. And here's the TMI bit, but it's going to help us enter the information of the now. I remember in some very racy parts of that book during high school needing to run to the bathroom to masturbate. Yeah, I said it out loud. My bad. Or maybe not. It is Venus's day. I'll tell you also later in life, I was tutoring mostly high school students as a way to help put myself through college when I finally returned after dropping off to follow my saxophone around the world. And a mother was complaining that her daughter just didn't like learning and never read books like she did when she was a kid. And I said, well, what kind of books are you offering? And she said this and this, and it was all yawn. So I was like, yeah, I remember really liking Tom Robbins, and I didn't think about it too much. And I just grabbed a Tom Robbins book off my shelf before the next time I showed up. It was Jitterbug Perfume. You only had to read the synopsis of the tale on the back cover to know why this mother would never give the book to her daughter, who was a high school cheerleader, because in that book, the protagonist is a high school cheerleader who becomes pregnant. And so my bad, right? That was like, oh yeah, I might want to like actually consider something and a little bit more deeply before recommending it to a kid or to anyone else. We're at that time in our life right now where Koa's 10 years old, and there's this general rule between his mom and his dad, which is that he might be able to watch a PG-13 movie, but the rule is that one of us has to watch it in its entirety first and intentionally with this. Is this like okay for him to watch? So I watched Iron Man the other night. That's a no. So is Iron Man 2. Probably so will be Iron Man 13. But the Hulk, yeah, that can play, right? So anyway, it's an interesting thing to consider as well, that 13 is this, I don't know, marker between PG movies and PG-13. What's that about? What happens at 13? Um, and maybe best expressed in the feminine, where oftentimes that can be the blood gate, right? The blood gates are, if you're not familiar, birth, right? Mother's blood, menses, right? Giving birth, should that happen, right? So moving from maiden to mother, menopause, which I prefer to call womenoplay, but that's probably because I'm not in that experience, which we know is a significant initiation. And then death, right, on the other side of the blood gates. And I'll just say that I'm very fortunate to have spent some time with some very powerful women, witches, who were reclaiming their connection to the power of blood and the power of their cycles, and releasing this, well, let's say, patriarchal training that their menses is some curse, and taking back very intentionally and consciously and body mind consciously connection to that great cycle of life and birth, right? Of ovulation and menstruation and these kinds of things. And, as a male, like, I'm not going to have that physical experience. And yeah, I would say part of me is incredibly grateful for that. And part of me is on the other side of that, because I know that men also have their tides. I'm certainly a very tidal dude. Gemini Brett, a card carrying Scorpio, Um, Moon in the first, and on we go. Cancer Mars now being stimulated by Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. Anyway, this isn't about me, but I'm very fortunate to have been around powerful women who were reconnecting to the beautiful menstrual cycle, and then helping me understand a bit about what it is and how that clock ticks. And I could wish this great fortune for all men to be around powerful women who are taking back the power of the feminine. And I'll never witness anything as powerful in my life, I am sure, as what I saw about 1 year ago today, when Scorpiana, my beloved, gave birth to our baby Maya, who was born on June 16th in 2024. And wow, I mean, just the warrior power of the goddess and that amazing, though I'll say quite traumatic entrance from the waters of the womb into this world where we can now breathe our own air into our own lungs and such, and just that transformation. And yeah, the power of the feminine, the power of birthing, and then also the softness and the intuition of the mother, which in so many ways begins to form as mother and babe are connected even before the birth. So it's kind of horrific that I took an image of a mother and a baby and did this to it. My bad. I will say a few things though here is I feel that we will accelerate towards collective healing if we can shift from the image that suggests patriarchy is some fat bastard king on some golden throne, waving like a turkey leg scepter about and demanding executions and wars, and shift instead to this image of a sobbing boy child. Yeah. And what if we could take that child and hold him and nurture him and soothe him and let him know that sobbing is okay, and that even though difficult, we have gratitude that this young one knows how to express his needs, and that if we can soften ourselves to hear that wordless language, that primal language, and listen and feed and soothe, then we can all come to a place of deep safety, trust, rest, to be cradled in the beautiful crescent of the elder moon. I wish this for me. I wish this for you, regardless of how you came in and how it's been thus far, and just the times in which we entered this space. Okay, and all of this inspired by Friday the 13th. So why am I hollering about masturbation? Come on, dude. Well, Friday we know is Venus's day, right? This beautiful, sensual goddess of love. Why not take a look at a chart? I began this journey at 10:13 a.m. Pacific time, but of course that means it was 13:13, 1:13 p.m. in Salem, Massachusetts. Why did I choose Salem? Of course, because of the Salem witch trials, right? At that time, we see the last degree of Virgo on the rise. Maybe part of that laughter, but turning into the Puritan side of that thing. If we don't, if we're not careful, I guess that can take us into really challenging places, including, killing the goddess. So we see this Taurus Venus in the first 10 degrees of Taurus, a place that is said to be, the decan or the face of Mercury, but within the bounds of Venus. Right, so we see Mercury as well as the steersman of this Virgo chart, now coming out of the beams of the sun in the tender Cancer, also in the bounds of Venus. We see the moon in Capricorn out of bounds, but in the bounds of Venus. And by the way, out of bounds and like the bounds or divisions of a sign are totally different things. Out of bounds moon means south of the Tropic of Capricorn, where the sun could never go not even in his dreams. And so we see the moon in this moment cast here south of the Tropic of Capricorn. Okay. Sun, of course, at the Tropic of Cancer, because the sun is just about to ingress tropical Cancer. But anyway, I love seeing that Capricorn moon here in the 5th whole sign, which is said to be passion and romance and risk in the joy of Venus. But it's interesting to consider in this chart, just begs us to that the 5th of Virgo is Capricorn. And it makes us wonder, I guess, if learning to walk that Virgo way, that way of the Virgin, if we must put Saturn, some kind of restriction or chastity belt in the place 5th of passion, the joy of Venus. Why is the 5th house the joy of Venus? Because the sun moves through the 5th and the 3rd and the 4th hours of the night, where now the sun is down beneath the ground, deep enough for darkness to have come to even the horizon, where we recently witnessed the setting of the sun's beams and the stars are out to play and we are in the night. And of course, in the tradition, Venus is said to be the benefic of the night sect, and the moon, the sect light of the night. And isn't night some terrifying thing? Well, not when illuminated by a near full moon, or let's say, I guess, a waning quincunx moon, as it will be tonight. And by the way, reclaiming our virginity, which I feel is part of the reminder when Virgo is on the rise, and some will walk this way in life, has nothing to do with chastity, you know. I mean, it can do, but it's really about reclaiming independence. And it's difficult, you know, to take back a consideration of what we put in our bodies in all ways, you know, to realign our diet, for example. It's something I struggle with, you know, and diet not only being the food we consume, but, you know, what about the news? The poison on the billboards, terrible images like this, right? Watching Iron Man 2 or The Hulk, which I just admitted I've recently done and probably will do again. And taking back our sexuality, you know? And really, Friday the 13th should be a reminder of this. It is possible that, what do we call this thing? Paraskevidekatriaphobia, the fear of the Friday the 13th, is like this patriarchal attack of the goddess. So I guess for a little bit, I'll drive in my lane, which is the sacred astronomy of the thing. Is 13 astronomically demonstrated to be a number of the goddess? And maybe we'll start with some of our number magic and maybe end there too, because what is the 13? When we consider 13 versus 12, for example, you'll hear me say so often that creation creates in 12s. And I feel this even more beautifully or elegantly or precisely demonstrated in one of the sister sciences of astronomy, which is number in time and space, that being musical harmony, number in time, frequency, vibration, you know, because the harmonic series, like the octave, oh, right, my higher note, is vibrating twice as fast as the fundamental, the root. Somewhere. Many of you can do that much more beautifully than me, working on it, you know? I just want to honor that the number 17 just showed, And 17 is a number that is feared in Italy. Like some Italian airlines don't have row 17 on their planes. How about that? That in Mexico, and it's not the only place, many of the Latin countries to use that term, it's not about Friday the 13th, it's Martes 13, the 13th on a Tuesday, Mars's day. Maybe it makes a little bit more sense for us to have some fear there. Okay, but why should we fear the number 13? I often have to say these days that I am not simply driven by my own Triskaidekaphobia or fear of 13 when I proudly align to 12 signs and never 13, that while Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus or Fucus is a powerful and beautiful healer constellation, certainly not some 13th sign, never was, never will be, because creation creates in 12. So right, the octave, that's the second harmonic, where the higher note is vibrating literally twice as fast as the lower. Well, if we went to 3 times as fast, we would hear the musical fifth above that octave. Or we can look at 3 versus 2, which is this. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. It's just getting a little easier. 3 and 2, right? If we have that vibration, like if I could speed that polyrhythm of 3 in the same space as 2 up until it was just a buzz, you would hear an interval that we describe in Western harmony as the musical third, fifth. Why the fifth? The fifth musically, so that's twinkle, twinkle, no, A, B, C, D, twinkle, twinkle, right? That relationship, there's frequencies that are vibrating in a ratio of 3, the higher, to 2, right? And that's the third harmonic. Well, we could go to the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th harmonic. We actually have to go much further than that. But we see that when we move through the harmonic series, the 12-tone scale, or 12 frequencies within the space of an octave, is born. So in Western harmony, where we also work with those musical fifths, if you speak the language, from C to G to D to A to E to B to F sharp to C sharp to G sharp to D sharp, right? We can go through the circle of fifths, as we call it, and get back to where we began. Interestingly, 7 octaves above where we started, we will touch each of the 12 tones or half steps in a musical octave. Now, I should just say while we're there that a fixed string instrument like a piano is incapable of playing a raga because Indian music and many other musics involve tones that are not in these 12 divisions of an octave, and that also the 12 equal divisions of an octave, known as equal temperament, that's a new advent, kind of coming in around the time of Bach, but a little later as well, which helped us now be able to take a fixed string instrument like a piano, which has these 12 half steps in an octave, and be able to play in every key. Because the truth is, the harmonic series, which is just nature, we take a fundamental tone, we look at that vibration, we double it, we triple it, we quadruple it, which is the double of the double, by the way, the octave of the octave, right? We multiply by 5, which gets to the musical third. Well, there, the way that we hear thirds, which is like do, re, mi, do, right? Like do, mi, do, right? Like that. way that we are trained to hear it from the equal temperament or fixed string octave these days, it's actually not in tune with the fifth harmonic. Right? We've kind of tried to tame this thing that's a little wilder, right? And like mathematically divided into this thing, right? And some would I think suggest that that's like this patriarchal thing, and I don't really love saying patriarchy as many times as I have today. I want to say it this way instead, and we'll borrow from another one of our sister sciences, which is number in space. So geometry, in which we have two tools, and one is the rule, right, which draws lines which are measurable, and then one is the compass, which creates circles, which really are not a perfect circle there, but a beautiful cup. um, but how do we know the circumference of the circle? I mean, we can either cut this and straighten it into a line and put the rule to it, or we take the measurable part of this, the diameter, the line through the circle, and we multiply that times pi. But pi is this transcendental number, a term I prefer to irrational. But irrational does not mean like crazy, but it really just means it can't be expressed by a ratio. We try, like 22 sevenths approximates pi, but as you know, 3.14, and it goes on and on forever with no repetition or end in sight. This transcendental number, much like phi, the golden number. And we better return there. But for now, let me just say that we have curves which are immeasurable and therefore representative of quality. And we have lines measurable and therefore representative of quantity. So I would prefer to say, like, from patriarchal or masculine or any of that baggage, just to say linear, right? um, Oh, I often love to teach that astronomy is the measurable quantity of the heavenly happenings, and astrology is the rainbow bridge that connects that measurable quantity with the immeasurable quality correspondences. And I also love to use our sister science of harmony to convey how that might work. Right? So if I do 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 dee do 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 dee da 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 do da, I really cannot play this rhythm and sing that at the same time like I once could. Sad. Anyway, some of you will run away from a song like that. Some of you might run in and say, well, that's interesting. And how is that 13? And let's count the beats if Gemini could snap. Doom, 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 da dee dun da dun dee da 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 dun da dun da dun. It's hard with odd time signatures. Yeah, let's not go down that place too far. I wish I could just play music for you, but we get into copyright issues, and copyright's such a linear thing, Anyway, just consider some song that you love that pulls you in. Well, it might push me away. Noise is the measurable side of sound, if you will. Actually, I like to use that term sound to describe your personal experience of noise. So noise, you can take the ruler to, it's vibrating the medium, there's frequency, there's amplitude, and all these other things that we name as we attempt to observe this phenomenon of noise. Right. But sound is your experience of that noise, and yours is yours alone, and mine is mine. Right. So we can go to a concert together that can really help us come together and dance together and move, which would be a great thing to do on Venus's day, and maybe especially on Friday the 13th. And that can bring us together in quality, but it's kind of difficult in quantity because how can I share with you how that music moved me, since it's only me who could be so moved? Do you see what I'm saying? And there's really something so amazing in that dance when we're kind of sharing our individual experiences of a thing together, right? Well, we have a sacred science called harmony that helps us understand something about the sound of noise. And maybe even from a personal perspective. I mean, if you came up in a culture, oh, let's say you're from the Middle East, you likely grew up on different scales than I did, right? And so those Middle Eastern scales might sound quite exotic to me, where for you, that's just your natural space, right? And then like the, diatonic kind of quote unquote Western thing, although they teach it in the East as well, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, might just sound completely square. And, you can sit at a piano and play black keys and play the pentatonics. It's a 5-note scale versus the white keys, a diatonic. And you just really get to hear a significant difference. And they're both beautiful, but where we're coming from culturally and much more might help us understand your unique personal experience of turning that noise into sound. So when they say when the tree falls in the wood and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? I'd say no, it makes a noise. It really vibrates the medium. There's crackles and stuff, but it takes ears to hear that noise to make a sound. You feel me? And that's how I also feel about the astronomy. So how does this Capricorn out of bounds moon applying to trine Uranus as it is today, as we're speaking Friday the 13th here together, with at least in Salem, Massachusetts, when we began, Venus in the 8th house of death and rebirth, and Saturn sitting on the land while Jupiter is on high. What does that invoke? What is such a kind of awful image such as this do for you? What does it do for me, right? How does that noise become sound? That's a very personal thing. But of course, when we're exploring, how does this moment now that I'm showing here dance you versus how does it dance me? Well, the great sacred science of astrology can help us. Because if I know, for example, that I was born with Mars at 1.5 degrees Cancer here, well, then I know I'm currently experiencing a transit by Jupiter, a transit by Saturn, by Neptune. How's that? What's that? How's that going to dance me? How might I intentionally dance to that? So I feel like it can help me wiggle versus just wiggle me around the place. Do you see what I'm saying? So discerning light here says, I would say it makes a frequency. Yeah, for me, frequency is part of noise. Amplitude, there's much more to it than that, right? Frequency is pitch, but how loud is it, for example? And really, when a tree falls in the wood, it makes many, 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 many frequencies, right? And I call that noise. And then your sound I have is your experience of that noise. And of course, yours will be different than mine. And your experience in correspondences as above, so below, of the above, of the celestial symphony right now, of like the planetary happening, that's going to be different than it is for me, right? So there's this noise, there's this Jupiter square from Cancer, the Aries Saturn Neptune conjunction. Well, how is that going to dance you versus how is that going to dance me? Some of that might have to do with where in the world you are in this moment of weirdness, of course. But maybe even that can be found in the mysteries of your natal chart, which is going to look entirely different than mine because every moment is absolutely unique. All right, so we get a natural 12-ness in music called the harmonic series, but it's not as even as the line would wish for it to be. And that's certainly true when we get to the astronomy. I'll spend some time there with you today. However, when you look at like a clock face, and I have one here, right? This is the magical moon dial. This beautiful dial. I wish I should learn and know the maker of this so I could say that. I found this online. It's made of selenite, like Selene or Selene, the moon. Though I have one. Oh, this isn't it. This is some obsidian, so I can watch an eclipse. But I have one of these also in a smaller circle, and either obsidian or onyx, right? Which is also nice to see, like one of the light, which might feel more like day, and the other of the night. But, of course, the moon is the light of the night, and that silvery glow. And here we see the waxing and the full and the waning moons, right? Like the young, the full, and the elder moons, you might say, maiden, mother, and crone. And you see in this beautiful magical moon dial, have 12 phases of the moon, right? When the moon is new, and then she waxes until the full O, her smile grows, and then shrinks as she comes back to meet the sun again. I don't know how it will look on your screen, but I like to put the sunset to honor that the full moon rises at sunset, and I can see where these other phases will be in the sky at sunset time. This is a really magical device. But I also really love this because, as you can see, they're choosing 12 phases of the moon, which is the system that I connect with because it helps me see the aspects, the whole sign aspects or arrangement of a 12 sign zodiac in the shape of the moon's smile, right? So when moon is sextile sun, she looks like this, right? And when moon square sun, and moon trine sun, and moon quincunx sun, and moon opposite sun, of course, the full moon. Then the waning quincunx, the waning trine, the waning square, the waning sextile, the waning semi-sextile, right? I mean, some cultures, like in Hawaii, there's a name for each of the 30 days of a lunation, although every other month we switch between 30 and 29, and let me get back to that. Many astrologers these days, many astronomers these days use an 8-fold system of the moon, right? Where we have it and have the halves into quarters, but then we have the quarters into eighths, and we get that so-called eighth harmonic, right? And like the 22.5 degree things, which is just like, it's kind of weird. Really, I guess it'd be 45 octiles, right? So that the waxing crescent would be moon 45 degrees from the sun, and then we get to the waxing half 90 degrees, and then the waxing the gibbous, right, 135 degrees, and then 45 degrees later we're full, the opposition 180, and then the disseminating and the waning gibbous, right? But I prefer 12, and I found this on Etsy. It wasn't called the magical moon dial there. I should maybe find it and drop a link for you, but it's a really beautiful thing, and frankly it actually wasn't that pricey. And what it is actually at that shop, hopefully it still exists, is it's the cover of a candle, right? So they have a huge selenite bowl candle, right? And then this goes on top, but you can order just the covers. Next time I teach like a sacred astronomy class, I think this will be part of the kit folks can order, because it really is a powerful device. And again, I love that they show us 12. Well, I'll tell you, if you've swung the compass, if you've studied your, as we call it these days, sacred geometry, you will know that it's actually a lot easier to create a division of 12, the 12-spoked wheel, the zodiac, than it is to create a division of 8. And I'm going to leave that there for now. I will say, for those of you who are on this journey with me around the planets and constellations at this time, and many of you I see here are, we're going to be doing that over the course of these months to come, right? So on Thursday next week, I'll be taking us into soul in the crescent, and how soul reflects the one light of sun in a unique way, and that literally the moon reflecting sunlight to earth is spirit, soul, matter, the incarnational device, if you will. And we'll be playing with the Vesikas, right? When the one becomes two, and all of these different beautiful crescents and beyond crescents that are born, and what happens when we take two circles of the same size, which moon and sun appear to be in our sky, right? And center those circles on each other's circumference, with the Vesica piscis, the fish's bladder, the mandorla, the sacred almond, the yoni, the gateway of creation, is formed. So I like to know that that gateway of creation is not moon alone, but moon reflecting sunlight, the crescent in the circle, the soul and spirit, right? And the earth crowns or is born throughout. So this month in Constellations, we're currently orbiting the moon, and Anna led a very powerful moon circle yesterday. I was privileged to be part of that. And next week, I'll take us on the Earth astrology deep dive, and we'll explore keys of the moon through these wonderful tools of sacred geometry and musical harmony. So with the sun last month, we were just singing the root, oh, and now we'll get into the second harmonic, oh, which we call octave, and you hear 8 in that and why, and we shall see. Next month, the lunar nodes, which are really the earth, moon, and the sun, right? Where the path of the moon snakes above and below that of the sun from Earth's point of view. And that happens, by the way, about every 27 and a half days, where the moon snakes north until north again. Interesting. That's pretty close to 28. It's actually the closest of the months that is. The month after, by the way, we get to Earth and the cross of matter and the horizon and the meridian and the quadrants and the elements and the seasons and so many things that are for, and how this brings us into matter. I'll call that noise. And then the 5, sound. And you can see the shape that I'm tracing on your screen is the pentacle, right? And who traces the pentacle in our sky? Can anyone please, who's present right now, answer that in the comments section? And while you're at the keyboard and the buttons, why not like the video, share it around, invite your friends here. Which planet pentacles in the zodiac? And thank you, Discerning Light, Venus. But it's only right because of your picture, where we also see the sun and the earth, right? It is from Earth's point of view that the Venus-Sun conjunctions, right? So Venus-Sun draws a pentacle in Earth's zodiac. Or if we created a solar zodiac, a heliocentric zodiac, Sun sees Venus and Earth, creating the 5-petaled rose, which really has a 10ness, and that's a deeper study. I should just say, and let's type it in here, if you go to geminibrett.com/constellations, or just geminibrett.com and click the Constellations tab, you can learn about the School of Astrology's membership group. Something's missing. And join us for a month and give it a try. We will make it worth your time. All right, well, 4s, the cross, this is a eucalyptus. I guess we'll call it a nut. And 5s. I have found also eucalyptus that does 3 and that does 6. It's like, I've found different pages of like the mysteries of the eucalyptus and all these things. I've never yet seen anyone speak about this. Like, you know, the rose 5s, and we find that 5 in the apple, and we could go on and on and on. But I don't know of any fruit that's sometimes 4s and sometimes 5 and sometimes 3s and sometimes 6s. I don't have example of those on hand because we are in the midst of this move at some point I'll open a box and just eucalyptus nuts will rain out, because every time I'm out here, I'm like picking these things up and just tripping on, well, like, how is this 4 or 5? And sadly it broke, but I had one branch that had 4 of these on it, and like little branches coming off of that main branch. And one, it was like 3, 4, 5, and 6. Diane, thank you so much for writing this. I'll read it out loud. Love constellations in the community and sharing of thoughts and feelings and knowledge. Would recommend to everyone who wants to go deeper in not only astrology, but what's happening in the sky. Thank you so much, Diane. And it was so nice to see you in person the other night at the Stone Circle here in Berkeley. All right. So let's talk about this pentacle, right? And usually I would show a bunch of slides around this, and I certainly will be doing for the Constellation crew. More importantly, I will show you how, using the geometer's tools of compass and rule, you can create a regular pentacle, a 5-pointed star. And I'll tell you, it's not easy to do. It's not actually even that easy to make the cross. But we'll be going there first, right? We will 4 before we 5, and we will 3 before we 4 in this month. Oh, we 2. All right. The pentacle in her beautiful shape describes the golden number 5. So this is another one of these transcendental numbers, right? Pi, of course, relating the measurable to the immeasurable parts of a circle, relating the circumference to the diameter, or the area to the radius, the radius, the radii. What's up with that? So fun. But in the golden number, which is for some time, but not back into history, been known as Phi, and its sister number Phi, we find this amazing gold that is described by life. So in the spiral of the ears, in the same golden spiral in the curl of the fetus within the womb, I see the shape of a soul nested within the curve of a pregnant belly. And the planets and the spheres. I'm trying to quote Hafiz, but I already took it off track. Anyway, the spiral of a galaxy, which is assumed to be like the Milky Way galaxy that is now receiving our sun and our solar system. In the relative measure of so many different parts of the human body, right, we see this ratio-ish that brings us to the golden number 5. And it's been well demonstrated in the so-called Fibonacci sequence, where we start with a number. Some start with 0, but that's not a number. So I'd rather start with 1 and the other kind of 1, and more of that for those of you in constellations to play at this time. That we go 1, 1, and to get to the next number of the sequence, you add the previous 2. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And then the last 2 numbers now are 1 and 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 12. No, 13. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, which is 12 12s, and it goes on eternally. And you can take the number of the sequence, divide it by the previous number, like 144 divided by 89, or 89 over 55, or 55 34ths, or 34 over 21, or 21 over 13. Okay, the higher you go, like 144 over 89, or whatever's next. I think it's is it 235? What's 144 plus 89?
144.
233. My bad. Right. 9 less than 10. Anyway, 233 over 144. That's fun in number play, isn't it? You get closer and closer and closer to the 1.618 ... forever, which approximates the golden number 5. And feel 13 in this. Yes? So it's one of the ways that we see the power and the mysteries of 13 embedded in mathemagics. And so in a pentacle, for example, and I should just show you an image of this. Well, let me just say, if like the side length is 13, you're going to find other parts of the pentacle, like the line segment held within two of the star lengths, will be 5, and that in one of the arms outside will be 8, and then the full arm 13, right? Doesn't work exactly like that, but the Fibonacci sequence, which approaches and the number of gold, it can also be found in the construction of the pentagon. And this is the kind of time where pictures tell 1,000 words, but we've already said 1,000 words too many, so let's move along. 12 signs, so beautifully described by the 6 circles about one, the sacred form known as the seed of life, which is the way we create the 12-spoked wheel, the zodiac. And some suggest that this 12-ness is the way that creation creates. One of those certainly being me. And I find it described in musical harmony, the harmonic series. I find it most precisely described in the seed of life, which births the 12-spoked wheel. We can see it, interestingly, also in kissing numbers. So what are kissing numbers? If you take 7 quarters, you will find that you can put one of those quarters central and then touch the other 6 around it, so that each of the 6 are kissing their neighbors and all of those are kissing the inner circle, right? Like that is the number that describes on a plane the amount of circles that will all kind of kiss each other around a central circle. Importantly, I'll say that 7 is really 6 about 1. That's also crucial to the seed of life construction, 6 around 1 to make the sacred 7. On the 7th day, she rested. Well, in 3 dimensions, so for playing with spheres, I think this project would be quite expensive if I invited you to go out and buy 13 basketballs. Or how about soccer balls, where often we find in the beautiful way that the patchwork happens, you get hexagons and pentagons, the 6 and the 5, beautiful. Which I will suggest also carries in it the mysterious code of the 12 and the 13. All right, well, if you had 13 of these soccer balls, or let's go basketball, because the patchwork nature of a soccer ball makes it in some ways less spherical. If you have 13 perfect spheres, you will find that this is the kissing numbers in 3D. That 12 spheres will perfectly embrace the inner sphere of the same size, so that each sphere around the inner sphere will kiss its neighbors, which I think would be a triangle of balls. I'll have to see it. but also kiss the inner one, right? So the inner one receives 12 kisses. And that's so important as well, because while on a plane, kissing numbers is 17 for circles, it's the 6 around the 1. For spheres, it's 12 around 1. So we will often hear folks these days suggesting that it's 13, not 12, and the patriarchy attacked the 13th, and no. And in fact, we'll see that astronomically when we talk sun, moon, earth, as we will here in a bit. But we also have these interesting tales like Christ, who is the sun in your sky, and the 12 disciples, like Didymus Thomas. Thomas means twins. Didymus means twins in a different language. So twins is the cat that I describe as Gemini. I mean, intriguingly, in the Greek myth of the twins, there are actually twins. Many know about Castor and Pollux, or Castor and Polydeuces, but their sisters, Helen, the face that could launch 1,000 ships, right? Helen of Sparta, and her sister Clytemnestra, whose tales are quite challenging indeed. And twins is something that shows itself in the myths. Like, for example, those children of Sister Sky and Brother Earth, Nuit and Jeb, who are allowed to come together thanks to the gifts of Jehuti, and birth Osiris and Isis and Nephthys, but Set first, the eldest of the four. Anyway, we see interesting tales of twins from around the world, and also of twins from many places. And we see some interesting stories about the 12 and the 13. So, for example, Magdalene, where does she fit in that mix? Right? Christ and his 12 disciples, but Magdalene doesn't quite fit in because she's traveling with Christ. And I should suggest maybe even delivering his light, for they are the sun and the moon. But there were 3 Marys at the crucifixion: the maiden and the mother and the crone. Well, at least the maiden, let's say the wife of Christ, who was probably carrying his child, his mother, right? Said to be the Virgin Mother Mary. And then maybe an auntie. It's hard to say. There's much debate about who the third Mary was at the crucifixion. And by the way, the sun is crucified every day. The sun on the cross of the horizon, sunrise and sunset, Horus defeating Set and Set defeating Horus. But also in the year at Easter, when the sun is east of the center of Earth, at the cross of the plane of the year, the ecliptic in the plane of the day, equator. Much mysteries. And by the way, we will get in this marathon journey to the Gregorian calendar, and why that Gregorian Advent really occurred as a result of Easter slipping from the equinox, because the Julian calendar didn't quite have the math right. And then I will share a unique thing for folks born after 1982, like my beloved Scorpiana was, versus those of us born before, like myself in 1975. So here's a question for you. Are you before October 4th, 1982, or after? And maybe it would be more like October 14th. We'll go see. So Discerning Light says 1969. I'm intrigued to learn, and thanks Sky Gypsy for saying this, about Rudraksha seeds. I think that came through as I was waving eucalyptus nuts about. So I look forward to learning more about what that is. Thank you for that clue, that whisper. All right, well, let's get to the astronomy of the thing, because I will share that certainly 12ness in the astronomy is even less precise than it is in the harmonic series. The harmonic series clearly brings us to a 12-fold division of the octave, but it's not as even as the line would like. Sacred geometry offers that clear expression. So the 12 equal dashes on the clock face, for example, are very easy to draw once you've played with the geometer's tool called the compass, which curves, and found your way to the seed of life, where we just have 2 6-petaled flowers within and without, right? There's a seed in this flower. And then we can just draw lines through the inner petals, and we can draw lines through the outer petals, and we make the 12-spoked wheel, which in a way consists or is created out of 2 6s. So that really brings us into polarity and much more. There's a lot of astrologers who are arguing for this constellational zodiac and say that it's 13 signs and they're different sizes, and I can't wait. I'll do this sometime. I'm going to create a clock face that looks like that and then ask you to tell me what time it is. Creation creates in 12s, but astronomically it is perhaps true that the 12-sign zodiac was born through the moon, or really the way that the moon reflects sunlight to earthly eyes. So there's many types of moons. One of those is the moon moving through the stars, the sidereal months. Or you could look at this also as a tropical month, which would be the moon in its respect to the North Pole of Earth, which is 0 Cancer, right? So the moon goes home every 27 1/3 days as the moon's orbiting the Earth. You'll have a lunar return, the moon returning to the same zodiac degree where it was when you were born, every 27.321 days. There's a little tiny difference between the sidereal month, like moon Pleiades, versus the tropical month, moon to Gemini, back to moon to Gemini. The Pleiades in our day and age conveniently mark the cusp between Taurus and Gemini, so it's easy to describe them that way. The tropical month is like 27.32159 days, something like that, and the sidereal month like 27.32166. I mean, we really need to get into deep math and the ability to measure precisely to even know the difference between the two. And there is a difference because of precession, axial precession. But in that short amount of time of 27 1/3 days, there's very little precession of the equinoxes. Well, a fun truth is 10 times of the moon around the zodiac is pretty close to 9 lunations. A lunation being the synodic cycle of the moon. So new moon to new moon, or full moon to full. It's about 29 and a half days. 29.53059 and change, but who's counting? And so cultures who align their calendar months to the phases of the moon typically alternate between months of 30 and 29 to keep that 29 and a half day pace. Okay, well, an issue there is that your calendar year of 12 months will be like 354 days. You're very close to the draconic year, interestingly, but you're not at the solar year, right? So if you want to plant in reap by the phases of the moon. This is good. You're getting in touch with soul. However, you better honor the seasons if you like things like survival, right? And so you ought to align your moon phase calendar with the solar calendar, the Earth Sun calendar, the seasonal calendar too. And the way that that works so beautifully is that over the course of 19 solar years, so 19 seasonal years, tropical years, you have 7 leap months. Right? After one silver year of 354 days, you're about 11 days off from the year. So after 3 years, you're about 33 days off. So you throw in a leap month, but you can't throw in a 33-day month. It's either going to be 30 or 29, depending on where you are in that rhythm of alternating between 30-day and 29 months to keep that 29.5-day pace. And by the way, it's never 28. The type of months that I encourage star students to know are synodic, the month of phases, 29.5 days, tropical or sidereal, right? The moon getting around the earth, if we use that model, 27.3 days, draconic, moon snaking north and south of the sun's path. It's about 27. Oh, you know what? Actually, that one's not 27.55. That one's less than 27.3, right? Because the nodes retrograde. So it takes less time for moon to go north node to north node than it does for moon to get around the zodiac. Let me just show that one to you. Because the nodes retrograde, right? So let's just use this moment, Friday the 13th, June 13th, 2025 at 13:13 in Salem, Massachusetts, where the moon's at 2032 Capricorn, right? And let's first just say, okay, well, how long does it take for the moon to get back to that same degree? So when will the first lunar return from that moment be? And the answer is July 10th. Okay, that's the 27.3 days. Well, dig the phase, right? Right now, we're in the moon is in the waning quincunx. We were a few days removed from the full moon, which was a Sagittarius fully reflecting Gemini sunlight to earthly eyes. And now we have the Capricorn moon about 150 degrees or quincunx the sun, right? So where are we in the magical moon dial? We've gone from full and we've waxed. The smile has grown, from new, the smile has grown until full, and now it's starting to shrink again. So this is like right now, this Capricorn moon reflecting Gemini sunlight to our eyes. But when the moon gets all the way around again here, it's not actually there. Right? It's going to go here because the sun also moves, because the earth doesn't stop orbiting. And a pretty cool thing to see, and it's wonderful to see it here, is that again, for the moon to get all the way around and return to where she is today, it's going to take like 27.3 days. Well, in that amount of time, the sun's moved about 27.3 degrees. And less at this time of the year, 26. Why? Because the sun is slowest through our zodiac in July, because the earth is furthest from the sun when the sun is in tropical Cancer. So we often teach that the sun moves 1 degree per day, but at this time of the year, it's moving slowest, which is like 57 arc minutes per day. So it has less space that it covers, right, between this moon reflecting sunlight and the time of the lunar return. That's a lot. But as you can see, like at this time, we'll have a Capricorn full moon, right? Capricorn moon fully reflecting Cancer light to our eyes. Well, a fun thing, and you know what, we'll do this instead from the image of a new moon. Let's just go here. This Cancer new moon conjoined Jupiter this year is a pretty magical thing, but I want to just show you the sun and the moon. Let's bring the nodes and Lilith into this mix too. And I'll put this on a 0 Aries wheel to make it a little easier for us to track. So we have this new moon at 407 Cancer, right? Let's say Cancer new moon. The moon is going to return to that same degree 27.3 days later. That's an average thing. And that will be the span of time between June 25th and July 22nd, if you're into this whole Gregorian trip. But the next new moon won't happen for a couple days from then, right? Since the sun has also moved. And so we go from that new moon to the next new moon. Oops. Will be between June 25th and June 21st. In the average lunation, new moon to new moon, 29.5 days, or 29.53059. All right, well, let's look at a different month. So this will be Draconic. Let's look at moon at the south node. So we'll look at this Virgo moon, south node conjunction June 30th. Okay. Well, the moon is going to conjoin the south node again at a lesser degree than 21 Virgo, because generally speaking, the lunar nodes retrograde their way through the zodiac. See that? So it's less than the 27.3 days for the moon to get around. The Draconic month is the shortest that we'll visit. But let's also look at the anomalistic month. So this is moon conjunct the true black moon Lilith. We have one here on July 4th, interestingly, for those of us here in the States, 2025. And then for the moon to get with Lilith again, from July 4th, we'll go to August 1st. But let's actually say it this way. From a Friday at 10:28 p.m. in Salem, Massachusetts, in Scorpio, in the 8th sign, okay? And look at the sun at the times at 13, Cancer, aligned to the Sirius degree. So all of the images are still kind of alive, even though I'm digressing into astronomical space, right? But notice that this is Friday, Venus's day, with moon in Scorpio. And 10:28 p.m. on the clock at that time, and then August 1st, Friday at 4:36 p.m. So do you see how it's like 6 hours short of 28 days? The anomalistic month. So this is moon in her elliptical orbit of the earth. If we use that model, really they're dancing about one another as together they circle the sun, or ellipse the sun. This ellipse, the moon gets close to Earth every month, para-G, close to Earth, and then far away. And the far point, the apogee, that's moon conjunct true black moon Lilith in a chart, which is why I always put Lilith on the chart so I can know more about your moon. Was she close and fast and big? Was she small and far? 400 arrived earlier in our game. I can't even remember how. But I want to invoke the power of 400 later as well, as we talk Gregorian calendar tricks and find our way to Charles the First. What? We'll find the power of 400 here. Moon and sun appear to be the same size in our sky, because while moon is 400 times closer to us than the sun, moon is 1/400th of the sun's diameter in diameter. And by the way, while that diameter relationship of moon and sun, 1:400, is consistent, that moon is 400 times closer to the earth is not, because ellipses. But generally speaking, learn and know this beautiful truth of 4. I'm just looking down at the astro die and seeing that face was up. That generally speaking, the moon is 400 times closer to Earth than sun, but 1/400th the diameter of the sun, and therefore they appear to be the same size in our sky, which is about half a degree of arc. How amazing. All right, well, there's many moons, and none of them, by the way, are 28 days. So release that ignorant training from your consciousness. The anomalistic month, Moon Lilith, closest to 28 days, it's like 27.55. We can drop down from there to the sidereal or tropical, Moon circling the zodiac, 27.3 to 1 days. We can drop down to an even shorter period, the draconic month, Moon North Node to Moon North Node, or Moon South Node to Moon South Node. That's like 27.22 days, I think, on average. Or we can increase to the month that I think we're most familiar with, the lunation, the phases, which really is moon reflecting sunlight to earthly eyes, the three things. 29 and a half days, 29.53. 29.53059, according to the current measurements. And we believe we are much more precise now than back in the day before the decimal point and the zero came around and it was all fraction play. And our ability to measure and observe and the technology has increased, yes. Now, how many months in a year? So you'll often be taught, oh, there's 13. Like there's a whole trip of people who are telling us that we need to release ourselves from this patriarchal demonization, who took us away from the indigenous awareness that there are 13 months in a year, and bastardized this by saying there are 12, and made this 12-sign zodiac, and made this 12-month calendar, where really it should be 13. You've all heard this, yes? Because there's clearly 13 months in a year, and that we need to realign ourselves with nature and do 13 months of 28 days. All right, well, two things there. The moon does not 28. So I love the intent. I don't love the message so much. I love the intent of realigning ourselves with the natural cycles, of course. That's what I'm about. But if we're going to do that, let's realign ourselves to the natural cycle, and the moon never 28s. And even if she did, 13 28s is 364. So you're flailing, because 364 is not 365. Or 365.25, right? Because the year is 365 and a quarter days. No, it ain't, Caesar. 365.242199. At least learn 365.24. This is what necessitated the Gregorian calendar advent, because the Julian calendar was based upon this idea that the year, right, was 365 and a quarter days. That is, the Earth is orbiting the sun. There are 365 and a quarter spins. And how do we deal with that in a solar calendar? You have a 365-day year, because it's hard to have a quarter day in a year. Now, there's an organic way we might do this, which I think is beautiful. And there's some theory that the great Mesoamerican timekeepers once were, which is that sorry, I'm like spying accidentally and I can't help myself. My beloved is in a window over there, like in meditation and mantra. And I'm just wondering what's happening. And I'm like, I should be doing that. We should all be doing that. Because she's in like a very deep goddess happening right now. And I'm like, did I do something? Which is a sad place that I will go. And sometimes that's because I did. But I think a lot of that too is this idea that it's all the man's fault. And I have that like entrenched in here, right? And maybe more than some other men do. And working my way out of that will be part of me reclaiming my connection to the sacred. Maybe I'll even say reclaiming my own virginity. So let's get back to the calendar trip. Well, we were there, so let's be there. I'm just going to bookmark a thing. Let me bookmark it by showing a strange picture once again. Friday the 13th with little baby Jason in the purple hockey mask. Okay, we'll get back to that. So, yeah, the Gregorian calendar Advent is this fascinating thing. Because the Julian calendar assumed 365.25. Now, where I was actually was like an organic way we might do this. Fraction of a spin beyond 365 each year. When do we begin days? 12 a.m., right? What? Why would you begin a day in the middle of the night? And even if you do, why not begin in the middle of the night? That is, after all, when the sun begins his daily climb. We have great evidence of this at sunrise. Maybe that makes the most sense of the time to begin a day. Sunrise. We went from night to day. And in fact, if you're born between 12 a.m. on the clock, which approximates natural time, and sunrise, then you will find the day of the month in which you were born. Like, let's just show an example here. Will be different than there'll be some difference between that calendar day. We got to put our feet back on the ground. Okay, this is not a great example. Let me just take us to Berkeley, where I live, for this Cancer new moon, and we'll see that it happens here at 3:31 a.m. on the clock. Okay. So we're going to see that the calendar says Wednesday, right? That's one of these weird things, right? So Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. But if we look at the essential dignities for that time, we're going to see that it says the day of Mars. And what is the day of Mars but Tuesday? Because the clock is going to turn at 12 a.m. Sorry, the calendar, which is a estimate of yearly time and maybe monthly time, is going to turn the page at 12 a.m. on the clock, which is an estimate of natural daily time. But in essential dignities, days begin at sunrise. So if you're born on like a Friday between 12 a.m. and sunrise, you're actually born on Jupiter's day, which is Thursday, because Friday will begin at sunrise. Says this system of essential dignity, and I wonder how old that is. Because this idea that there are 7 days of the week, why is that? Named for the planets, right? Lunes, Monday, Martes, Tuesday, Miércoles, Mercury's day, right? Jueves, Jupiter's day, Jove, Viernes, Venus's day, Sábado, wait, easier to hear, in Saturn's day, Saturday, Sunday. That goes way, way back to the Chaldean times, to the Babylonian times, and maybe that sources back to the Akkadian and the Sumerian. It's hard to say. Well, why 7? Because of the 7 planetas, the wandering stars, the luminaries, the sun and the moon, and the Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn too? Yes, but what about half a fortnight? Because while the lunation, 29 and a half days, is not 28, it is like 14 days-ish between new moon and full. And then between full moon and new. Now, you don't have to track many cycles before you start realizing that the 14, which you can see here, by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that the 14 days waxing and the 14 days waning doesn't work. You need to go 14 waxing full, 14 waning. Now you have 29. And then next month, you got to go 14 waxing, full, 14 waning, new. Now you have 30. And so you're alternating between 29 and 30-day months, right? And that keeps that 29 and a half day pace, which is actually what the full moon does. But this fortnight is an ancient, connection to celestial time. It's certainly an approximation, but that would be like the growing moon versus the shrinking moon. And of course, 2 fortnights of 14 days would be 28. And so half a fortnight of 7 days would be a week. Now that 7-day week, like we see it in some of the ancient traditions, certainly not all of them. Like before the Julian calendar came around, the Roman calendar, I think, had like 10-day weeks, quote unquote. But the week's not really a natural thing. The day certainly is, sunrise to sunrise. Or was it midnight to midnight? Or was it sunset to sunset? If you look at Galileo's astrology chart, yes, Galileo was an astrologer. He's drawn it in his own hand. He's trying to rectify his birth time between, I think, 3:30 and 4 p.m. But at the top of the chart, you get to see 2 totally different dates. And so people are like, oh, you can't work with that. It's bad data. No, it's the same date. He's just in one using the new convention, which in Pisa, Italy at this time in the 16th century was this AM, PM thing, right? Before solar noon or after solar noon. And that's going to be a different date for Galileo, who was born late in the day, than when we looked at the previous way of doing time, which was measuring hours from sunset. Why would you do sunset? Isn't sunrise natural? Yes, that's when the day begins. Sunset is when the day ends. What? But my friends, if you're aligning your calendar months with the phases of the moon, well, the young moon, the sliver crescent, is found in the sunset west. As the sun sets, we see that evidence of Diana's bow, the young moon, the sliver crescent, the smile reminding us that every month she survives her fire trial. The conjunction with the sun. A conjunction with the sun, which we call new moon, is really no moon, unless it's a solar eclipse and you happen to be on Earth in the place where there's some shadow play. It's the next day, or maybe 2, when we see the moon reborn. And we see that in the sunset west. So many cultures who tune their calendar months to the phases of the moon begin their days at sunset, the first day of the month, when you first see visibly that true visual new moon. And then, the next day is going to be at sunset the next day, the sunset the next day. Where, by the way, if you're looking at sunset time in the northern hemisphere sky, you'll see that waxing of the moon from the west to the east moves from the right to the left through your sky. And I have not yet found a solely lunar calendar tradition that does not also write from the right to the left. Sky Gypsy, this is a fun reflection. Life begins in the womb. No light there? I can't remember. I imagine there's some serious light happening in there. Can sunlight get through these many layers of epidermis into the womb space where the baby is? Babies will be in the womb with their eyes open for some time, right? Discerning Light says yes. But you can see it in this name. There's light everywhere. Intriguing things to consider. And what would that experience of light be? Might be similar to what's happening inside the Earth at the crystal core, which is, of course, the heart of the tropical zodiac. Tale for another time. All right, well, I've already been here for so much more time than I thought I would be, but hopefully you're having fun. Many of you have heard these things from me before, but redundancy is built into every great space mission. And We do need to honor the space if we want to see 13 as a number of the Global Guiddess. So is 13 a number of the moon? Well, there's 12 months in a year. But if we're using the phases of the moon to determine that, first of all, if we're using moon through the zodiac, there's actually more than 13. As I shared before, Maya, my baby, is going to turn 1 in a few days on the 16th. Well, she's already had her 13th lunar return. I watched it. She was born with the moon very close to Spica. Beautiful star. And I've seen moon conjoin Spica 13 times since Maya arrived. So aren't there 13 months in a year? Well, I think of a month as the phases of the moon. Okay. There's actually, the moon will get around, like on her first birthday, the moon won't be at Spica. The moon gets around 13 and a third times. 13.37, of course. In that same amount of time, there are 12.37 phases. And your fourth solar return, you kind of have a similar phase to that which you were born. Wait, wouldn't that be the third? But it's really your 19th solar return. Again, we find this amazing synchronization of the polyrhythms of Earth, Sun, the solar year, and the Earth, Moon, Sun, lunation month of phases every 19 years, which is almost exactly equivalent to 235 lunations. And I remember this with 19 as the sun card of the tarot. Oh. And the tilt angle of Earth in our day and age is like 23.5 degrees from the vertical. So 235, that 23.5 lunations in 19 years are sun card of the tarot. What an amazing thing that 29.53059 and 365.242 will actually synchronize. I should say that actually in our day and age, it's not 23.5, it's more like 23.4. But if you honor that, then you have to know that this is 66.6. Okay. Or like, well, the Tropic of Cancer is 23.4 degrees north of the equator. The Arctic Circle is 66.6 degrees north of the equator. Nobody wants to say 666, and nobody wants to say Friday the 13th. But before we return to that, right, oddity, and before we return to this thing, I'm reminding myself to bookmark once again. I want to finally finish this trip of maybe a more organic way to do a leap day. You don't need one. If you had a year where every day begins at sunrise, you have 365 of those. But the 365th day won't be 24 hours. It will be about 30. Because your next year is going to be a midheaven year or solar noon year. That's the easiest one of these things maybe to see, at least consistently, because sunrise, of course, like mountains, hills, trees, whatever. But midday, we know, not from some clock, it's nonsense. It's when the shadow is shortest because the sun is at its height. And by the way, that length of the midday shadow is going to change throughout the year as the sun climbs and then descends to its winter solstice depth. And it's one of the ways that we can tell time, not only of the day, the shadow across the sundial, but also of the year, the length of the midday shadow, which is going to either be due north, if you're in the northern hemisphere where the sun souths at midday, or due south in the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere where the sun norths at midday, or north or south if you live in the tropics, except for those 2 days, only in the tropics when the sun actually goes directly overhead and there's no shadow at midday. I digress. We could have a year of sunrise years, 365 of those, and then we begin our next year at midday on that 365th day, which is like 30 hours long, right? 24, and then about another quarter of a day. And then we have a midday year, solar, fire, whoa, right? And then the next year we have a sunset year. We're going into the darkness. And then the next year we have a midnight year, the dark year, you know? Well, most of us unconsciously signed up for all of our days begin in the middle of the night. And they don't even begin at the middle of the night, which is the sun at the IC, the Imam Cheli, the bottom of the heavens. They begin at 12 a.m. on some damn clock. Right? So we have this kind of artificial connection to a devotion of having always years beginning in the darkness. But from there we are born. I mean, interestingly, most of us also are working with the calendar where if you live in the northern hemisphere, we're beginning our years in the midnight of the year, which is winter solstice. It would make much more sense to begin at winter solstice when the sun ingresses Capricorn and shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn. That's a global moment. That's one moment, right? The sun ingressing Capricorn, and the best solar calendar ever, the most elegant solar calendar ever, which is the tropical zodiac, measuring the sun moving through 30 degrees of space 12 times, right, for the yearly trip. Instead, we're using this January 1st thing, which is different in London than it is in New York. Strange. So realigning to natural time. Well, this was also like the need of the Gregorian calendar advent, because the Julian calendar was working with this math based upon a 365.25 or 365 and a quarter day year, 365 and a quarter spins each year. And of course, not doing it organically of just a sunrise year, then a midday year, then a sunset year, then a midnight year, where you really wouldn't have to worry about what the fraction actually is. Well, the fraction is not 0.25. And this is the reason why in this system where they would use a leap day every 4 years, over centuries, and really more than a millennia, that math, which is not accurate, found that the calendar days and the determination based upon those calendar days for holy days like Easter were slipping from the seasonal events that those things are related to, like the birth of the sun at winter solstice, when our days now begin growing longer out of the longest night, and the resurrection of the sun where daylight overcomes night. Now that's a northern hemisphere thing to say if we call that December and March respectively, right? But the Easter was slipping from equinox when the sun is on the cross that is due east of the center of the earth. Easter, Oster, goddess of the dawn, right? Esther, Purim, Passover, sun passing over the equator. It's all astronomy, friends. And so the Gregorian Advent happened in 1582. Now, this is a fun thing and why I kind of invoked 1982, which is this. There is a 400-year pattern of the Gregorian calendar. So the Julian thing, which suggested that the year was 365.25 days long, was wrong. Sorry, I just had to look up when the first Friday the 13th movie came out. The third was in 1982. We're going to get back to that. So not 365.25 days long, not 365 and a quarter, which you can just do by having 365-day years. And then every fourth year you add a leap day. And in the Julian calendar, it was like we do it now in the Gregorian calendar, where February 28th, which Tom Robbins called February as worthless as the extra R in its name. Not my opinion. Look, he lives in the Northwest where February is very tricky, right? In February, we never say that. So he's got a point. But interestingly, we add a day and we get to 29, it actually then becomes this month that in a sense really invokes the old calendar, right, of alternating between 29 and 30 to keep the 29 and a half day pace of new moon to new moon. However, what happens after February, right? You go from February 29 and then March, like January, has 31 days. So you don't even get that gift of 29 versus 30, which you're going to find in the rhythm of like the Hebrew calendar, which was once the Babylonian, the Akkadian, the Chinese solely lunar calendar, alternating between 30 and 29 to keep the 29 and a half day pace. What about this Gregorian thing? It's the patriarchy who slayed nature by giving you this disharmonious 30 versus 31. My mocking tone. Well, how many days does it take for the sun to go through a sign? Equal divisions of space. And the answer is 30.44 days. So alternating between 30 and 31 is not natural. The issue is the way we do it and not honoring that the orbit is elliptical, not circular. Well, they didn't know that back then. But then also the issue of needing 31 for both Julius, July, and Augustus, August, back to back. Taking March away from the beginning of the year. So now October is 10 and December is 12. What? And other issues, right? That we could certainly clean up, no doubt. But just understand, please, that 30.44, about 30 and a half, is the average amount of time for the sun through a sign. And so the 30-31 thing, it's not natural. So I just hope that when you consistently are barraged by these ideas that the patriarchy destroyed the goddess calendar of 13 moons in a year. The moon doesn't 13 in a year, especially if you do moon phases. It's actually 12 lunations a year, but there's 12.37. So in the 19-year cycle, what ends up happening is you have 7 leap months over the course of the 19 years. So you have 12 years that have 12 months. And you have 7 years with 13. The 12 years of 12 months making 144, which we see in the Fibonacci sequence as we played with before. And the 13 months in 7 years would be 169. And we can then take the 144, right, the 12 years with 12 months, and add them to 169, 7 times 13. Wait, is that right? No, 7 times 13, 91. My bad. Oh, well, that's also fun, isn't it? So 7 years will have 13 months, 7 leap months over the 19-year cycle. I haven't even gotten here yet. You're seeing light bulbs and stuff. So that's 91 months, right? In the 7 years that have a 13 or month, a leap month, you get 91 months. We turn that around and you get 19. Also, some seasons have 91 days. So 12 times 12, the 12 years with 12 months, 144 months. The 7 years with 13 months, or the 7 leap months, 91 months, and the 144 plus 91. There's our 235 lunations in 19 years. And how fun to finally discover 91 in that code. So one of the ancient problems, by the way, was why do the seasons, and I'm talking about in this case between solstice and equinox, and that equinox and the next solstice, and solstice, equinox, equinox, solstice. So let's say December solstice. Now let me say it more globally. Capricorn solstice to Aries equinox. let's say it more globally, solstice to equinox to northstice to west equinox and so solstice to east equinox to northstice, northstice to west equinox to solstice to east equinox. There's not the same amount of days in each of those seasons. How many weeks in a year? 52. How many weeks in a season? 13. It's the deck of cards. The 4 suits are the 4 seasons, and each of those suits has 13 cards. The 13 weeks in each of the 4 seasons of a year. Well, it's not that precise because, again, that would get us 13 times 4. To get the 52 weeks in a year, we multiply those 52 weeks times 7 days, and we're going to get 364. All right. And so if your birthday is on Friday this year, let's say it's happy birthday time for you. Happy birthday to you here on Friday the 13th, 2025. Well, of course, your calendar birthday next year will be June 13th. Doesn't mean it'll be your solar return. But your birthday next year will be on Saturday. Have you seen that cycle? That if you have Friday birthday this year, it's Saturday next year, Sunday the following year, Monday, Tuesday. It doesn't actually go all the way through the sequence because of leap day. You'll actually leap a day. So you can might go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Check it out. And of course, we have a leap day every 4th year, right? Every year that is divisible by 4, like 2024, has a leap day, right? Kind of. And this is like the big shift at the Gregorian calendar advent, which was realizing that 365.25 was a bit too long for the actual amount of rotations in a solar year. They found that the better math is 365.24. The number that I've come to know, 365.242,199 days per year. Okay, we need decimals and real precision to get there. And that's an average, by the way. But let's say 365.242. We go there, 0.242. That like looks cool also. It makes 8. Some like 8 cross quarters in a year, like 8 moon phase systems. Where we bring in our Beltane and our Lammas and our Samhain and our Imbolc and all of those beautiful things between solstice and equinoxes. So we get 8ness. All right. So the sun at the mutable cardinal cusps, the tropical zodiac, the earth zodiac, the solar calendar zodiac, and then the sun at the 15 degrees of the fixed signs, 15 Taurus, 15 Leo, 15 Scorpio, 15 Aquarius, which sometimes we'll call like astronomical Imbolc. Well, that's also, by the way, the beginning of the Chinese solar calendar, which has 24 solar terms. They wouldn't call it this, but from the tropical astrologers' way to describe the moment when the Chinese solar year begins, it's the sun at 15 tropical Aquarius. And then every 15, not days, every 15 degrees will take us through one of those 24 solar terms. Fun stuff, I think. And you're still here. So my niece Whitney, I can hear her from across the bay screaming, "Nerd alert!" And I'm so glad I'm not alone. Which reminds me, because it's been a bit, what a wonderful time for a plug. Please join us. You're not alone. Constellations, the School of Astrology's membership community is amazing. We have regular community discussions throughout the week held by amazingly beautiful beings, where amazing, beautiful beings like you come together to talk story, to share their wisdom, their insight. My partner and I, Scorpiana, teach a class at the beginning of the calendar month together on the sun, this month the moon, The next month, she leads an amazingly, beautifully heart-held coaching circle around the essence. In this month, the moon, next month, the nodes, the following month, the earth. Then I teach the deep dive where we use our sister tools of sacred geometry, of musical harmony, of number magic, and deep astrological awareness to take us even deeper in our orbit of one planet a month, taking our time. And then the last month we get together and we just kind of share what's happened for us. There's a whole chat thread going on and much, much more. It's a really wonderful place. So give it a try for a month. If you do, by the way, and I'll tell you once again, GeminiBrett.com. You just go there and then tip the Constellations community tab. Constellations. I think I spelled that correct. You could also do GeminiBrett.com/constellations. When you get to the checkout page, make sure you use the coupon code, which is STARFAM. That'll bring you down from 2222 to 19.33. It should be 13, but anyway, give us a try for a month. You can leave whenever. It's a really brilliant community. And QZ, thank you so much for saying this. That Constellations is so wonderful. Highly recommended. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, thanks for saying this too. Thanks for your brilliance, QZ, and for all of you. Oh wait, 7 month the leaping. That is kind of catchy, I feel, but I'm easily caught. Okay, so there's actually a 400-year system in the Gregorian calendar. Check this out. It's kind of cool. We have a leap day. So there's a February 29th, and every year, like 2024 or 2020 or 2028 and 2032, we have a leap year in a leap day in every year that's divisible by 4. Unless that year is divisible by 100. So 2100, though divisible equally by 4, as all hundreds are, will not have a February 29th. But the year 2000 did, right? So it's a leap day every year divisible by 4, unless it is also divisible by 100. Unless it is also divisible by 400. And that gets you to, I think, 24.22 days in a year in this 400-year cycle. Now, there's something else that has to get done that I'm ignorant of. Every maybe 3,000 years or something like that, because the known number now is closer to 24.242199, right? So that 0.19, you're off by just a tiny little bit. So I don't even know the calendar kung fu that's necessary to either chop a day or add a day or what, and we won't live to experience one, I understand. So this is like a fun thing. Okay, let me show you this on the chart. When we go from June 13th, 2025 and rewind 400 years. So let's go back 400 years. We will find that June 13th, 1625 was also a Friday. Friday the 13th. Well, I wondered what is happening that day. I want to share with you the Wikipedia page on Friday the 13th, which I thought it was pretty cool. I learned a lot from it today. I'm noticing, by the way, in one place, it looks like I've just been sharing this somewhat disturbing image this whole time. Oh, maybe not. I think Instagram just shut down after an hour. But the disturbing image is this. And actually, I think before we play more with like numbers and astronomy and the more geeky space, let's spend a little time here. Blue flowers growing by the purple pond. Y'all know your Dr. Octagon from the Strange album, Dr. Octogynecologist. Album name might tell you to tread lightly, but it is an amazing avant-garde record from Cool Keith and The Automator and DJ Qbert, where we get to learn, for example, that Dr. Octagon was born on Jupiter. Anyway, so why this image? Because really what I was going to do was show an image like, the one that I have for my desktop. You can't see it, but a Moon-Venus conjunction. Why would I do that? Okay, because 13 is in the Venus structure. We were speaking about how the pentacle, right, which in a way it's not perfect the way that the Venus and Sun from Earth's point of view describe a pentacle over 8 Earth years. It's not like a perfect regular pentacle because of ellipses. Venus is the most circular orbit, the most harmonic, as we should expect. And Earth is actually rather circular too, but they're ellipses, and so we don't get a perfect pentacle in the 5-pointed star that Venus and Sun trace in Earth sky over the course of 8 Hobbs. 8 leap dayless years, let's just call it that. 8 times 365. In the pentacle, we see golden number. So you can draw pentacles that show measures of 1, 2, and 3, of 2, 3, and 5, of 3, 5, and 8, of 5, 8, and 13. And that's amazingly, the 5, 8, 13 part of the Fibonacci sequence is really beautifully demonstrated in the dance of Venus and Sun and Earth's zodiac. Because, or from Sun's point of view, maybe even more, that the Venus-Earth conjunctions create kind of a double pentacle, or the tenfold structure of the passion flower. But that this star is drawn over 8 Earth years, which are 13 Venus years, right? The amount of time it takes Earth to get about the Sun 8 times is the same amount of time almost exactly for Venus to 13 times orbit the Sun. And in the 8 Earth orbits and the 13 Venus orbits, there's this 5-pointed star, 5, 8, 13, leading to Fibonacci, the gold, and all of these things. Okay. There's also, for those of you who have studied the Venus star, which slowly retrogrades through the zodiac, and we're in a very important time of that, where the Aries point is recessing back to Pisces, the Scorpio point back to Libra. Eventually, the Gemini point will go to Taurus, and there's going to be all of this Venus, Taurus, Libra, Pisces, where Venus is said to be an honored guest, versus the way that the star has been, with a point in Aries, Mars, a point in Scorpio, Mars, a point in Capricorn, where Mars is said to be exalted, right? It's going to be an interesting thing to see how that shifts our energy. I call it part of the mechanism of the Global Guiddess's Archetypal Ascent. And for those of us who learn from Daniel Gemario, Kaylin Castell, from the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School tradition, we work the Venus-Sun cycle also in conjunction with the moon. That the Moon-Venus conjunctions, about 7 of these, with Venus falling, that's the fallen angel, is a morning star, that's Lucifer, right? The fallen angel. That about 7 Moon-Venus conjunctions as Venus falls into the beams of the Sun, and later, after her death and rebirth, her journey behind the Sun, as she returns as an evening star, the moon will conjoin Venus as she ascends from the horizon. And that we work with those 7 Moon-Venus conjunctions as morning star visible and evening star visible as the descent and the return of Inanna and the release of the 7 royal or holy adornments, the me, and the reclamation of them on the other side. That in tune with the human chakras and more. If you'd like to do that, I very much highly recommend Venus Alchemy, where Kaylin Castell and Sheridan Semple are bringing people through this tradition that I believe was first dreamed forward by Daniel Gemario. Then at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, Daniel's now at the Turning of the Ages Mystery School. And if you want to just look at where you were born in that cycle and play with your Venus star, holler. So GeminiBrett.com, you can support the work. You can give a donation there. You can book a session. We can connect, or join Constellations where we can connect there as well. And I will be teaching. We will, Anna and I together, we will, the community and us together will orbit Venus in month 6. Because we're going to go Sun, Moon, Nodes, Earth, Mercury, Venus. I mean, in some senses, because I'll be teaching 5 with Venus and 6 with Mercury, maybe we should go Sun, Moon, Nodes, Earth, Venus, Mercury. Maybe we will. Anyway, time will tell. So we're in many branches at once, but all these branches I'm called to climb emanate from the same trunk. We were talking about masturbation, right? You never want to start a paragraph like that. Well, maybe for a racy novel. And I was sharing something about that in Tom Robbins' reading when I was a high school senior, maybe junior. I can't quite remember, when we read Another Roadside Attraction in Biff Smith's class. Biff Smith, the wonderful composer of the great song Triskaidekaphobia that not enough souls will hear in their lifetime. But I'll just say this fascinating thing, that it really feels like this movie franchise, Friday the 13th, has slayed. And this, what was it, Paraskevidekatriaphobia or something, fear of the Friday the 13th, has really slayed this opportunity for us to know Friday the 13th is goddess stuff. So Friday, first of all, Freya's day, Viernes, Venus's day. So get your roses out. And maybe for me, the black and white today, because I'm grieving a little bit of cultures who were aligned to the truth that on Venus's day we should all make love. 13, we see in this amazing structure of Venus, really of Sun, Venus, Earth. And in the sacred golden form of this pentacle that Venus and Sun together describe in earthly skies. And as the Venus star slowly retrogrades, Venus will have about 13 cycles in each sign, right? Like as the Aries star point is now recessing to Pisces after 13 Venus-Sun interior conjunctions in Aries. It's not always like that, but for the most part, yes. So 13 cycles times 8 year per cycle, 104 years. You multiply that by the 12 signs of the zodiac in 1248, 12 and 4 times 8. And it's not exactly that, but it's about that amount of time, about 1250 years for the Venus star to go all the way through the zodiac. Well, 13 in the moon, because there's 13 full moons a year, right? No. Depending on when you begin the year, there are 13 full moons 7 times in 19 years, right? Remember that if we really want to align our calendar months to the moon phases, that we find that we need a leap month 7 times in 19 years. So there are some years with either 13 new moons or 13 full moons. There is never a year, whether you do that January 1st to January 1st, or solstice to solstice, or equinox to equinox, or your solar return to your solar return, or whatever. You will never have a year where there's 13 new moons and 13 full moons, because there are 12.37 lunations a year. All right. But you can get 13, so there's 13 in the moon, right? And also, if we're looking at the moon with the stars, the moon gets around the stars 13 and a third, which looks 1/3 like 13 times per year. And the moon moves on average. And we definitely have to say on average with this, with all of these things, because ellipses, not circles. The moon moves on average 13 and a third degrees per day, which is why in nakshatra, 27 of those, the moon's 27 and a third days around the zodiac, is 13 and a third degrees of space, 13 degrees and 20 arc minutes, right? Some systems have 28 nakshatras or lunar mansions in other traditions, because the 27.3 days is about 28, but some have 27 and a smaller one for the 28, so 27.3, right? But I think most common lunar mansion tradition that at least is worked within Vedic astrology, 27 divisions of the ecliptic circle into 13 and a third degree slices. And the average distance the moon travels from one day to the next, 13 and a third degrees, 13 and a third journeys through the stars each year. So we really get the 13 in the moon, which is why I probably should have had moon in her 13ness, Venus in her 13ness for the thumbnail today instead of this horrific thing. Right? But maybe we see the moon here and this mother cuddling her little Jason baby. Maybe we see moon Venus here and this love between the mother and the babe. And maybe it's only love that will take the hockey mask. But, there's a lot of passion here while the moon rejoices in the third, the temple of the goddess, right? The language of the night, where hopefully, as the sun is deep beneath, we are safe enough to dream and rest and return to the vision language, yeah. Venus rejoices in the fifth. Passion, romance, risk, sex. I mean, these days, astrology teaches sexuality as the eighth. They're just like the eighth is Scorpio is sex. No. In the tradition, it's the fifth place, romance, passion. So if somebody's talking about a challenge between their partner and their lover, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to break out of my monogamous programming or something. I don't know. I won't personally, but that's just me. You do you, or you do y'all, or whatever. In the astrology tradition, there's actually a different place for a spouse, the seventh house, than for lover, the fifth house. That's intriguing. And the fifth is said to be the joy of Venus. These days, modern astrology relates Venus to the seventh. You know how that works. Seventh is Libra, as Venus. And interestingly, when Venus is elongated as an evening star, the furthest she can get from the sun is 48 degrees. And Venus traditionally is said to be the benefic of the night. You can actually put the sun in the fifth with Venus in the seventh. It's kind of cool. Because I would suggest Venus rejoices in the fifth because of what's happening when the sun moves through the fifth and the third and the fourth hours of the night. If we use Placidus houses, by the way. Passion, romance, risk, games of chance, the taverns, you're out at the club, dancing and all that, right? So let's take back on Friday the 13th, the passion, the romance. And then, so this was an interesting thing for me. How do we want to get here? Certainly not linearly, not at all. So I do want to just take you on a little Wikipedia tour because we should all be taught by the CIA. Oh wait, let me share this, I guess, in a different way. Wait, did I say that part out loud? Would someone please tell me? Actually, I guess I can see. Oh yeah, we shift here. Okay, so first of all, let's get here again. Paraskevidekatriaphobia. I think Paraskevidekatriaphobia. Paraskevidekatriaphobia, the fear of the number 13. I linked there through this Friday the 13th article at uh, Wikipedia, which I was reading this morning in a moon bath. And I think it's really cool. I'd encourage you to go check it out. We get to see things here, like it's considered unlucky, and it's Western superstition about the Gregorian calendar. But you get to see, for me, things that are really fun, like common years that begin on Thursdays have 3 Friday the 13th in February, March, and November. Right. So why would it be February? Because February has 28 days in a common year, not a leap year. Right. And therefore, like, if it's Friday the 13th in February, 28 days later will be March 13th. And of course, the 28, 4 times 7 takes us 4 times through the cycle of 7 planetary days. Right. So that's kind of a cool thing. But then you also get a Friday the 13th in November. So in 2009, because it began with Thursday and it's not a leap day, and also in 2015, and next year in 2026, we get 3 Friday the 13th if you're on this Gregorian calendar trip. And leap years, so not common years, that begin on Sundays. That's kind of interesting to me. Shouldn't those be the holiest years? Well, they're going to get 3 Friday the 13th as well. So this happened in 2012 and will next happen in 2040. January, April, and July, the 3 Friday the 13th in those years. Some years have 2 Friday the 13th. That happened in 2023, September and November, and will happen in these years. And many years have only 1 Friday the 13th. The luckiest years. What's with the unluckiness of Friday the 13th? This was interesting. I didn't know this before. There's a story. I had heard the story of Loki, in the way that Loki tricked the gods into killing Balder, who was immortal, except for he had one weakness, which that he could be killed by mistletoe, because who would ever do that? And Loki convinced Horror to string a bow with an arrow tipped with mistletoe, or I think an arrow of mistletoe, and it kills Balder, which is this terrible thing, right? And so that in the Nordic tradition, this might be part of the root of the fear of number 13 of Triskaidekaphobia, right? This Christian association of the 13 who are with Christ at the Last Supper. Well, who's that 13th? Magdalene, if you consider the 12 to be the disciples. I mean, for me, Christ the sun, the disciples the signs, and Magdalene the moon. Some say Mother Mary the moon. I think yes, that there's 3 moons waxing full and waning, and 3 Marys at the crucifixion, all those things that we explored before. In conjunction with Friday. Well, why Friday the 13th? So this is kind of an interesting thing. The Knights Templar on Friday, the October the 13th, were arrested and persecuted. Some say because they were up to some crazy sex stuff. Many say because they were trying to reveal the mysteries that they had discovered under the temple in their time in Jerusalem, which is now revealed in the Gothic cathedrals that came out of this discovery. Long story there. We get to the 19, which is fun. France, Friday the 13th may have been associated. So go check this out. But like part of what I want to share is that Friday the 13th superstition is actually not that old. It didn't really come out of this Templars thing, because Friday the 13th wasn't seen to be some scary thing until centuries later. That in other cultures, so like Hispanic and Greek, we get Tuesday the 13th. Right? So Martes 13. That in Italy it's 17. That's the unlucky number. So like many elevators you've seen, or many buildings, don't have a 13th floor. They're showing us an airline without a 17th row. Never knew that. What a trip. So this is actually some interesting statistics around the rates of accidents on Friday the 13th versus other days. And then this is an intriguing thing to me. I hadn't heard of that. Maybe some of you have, that there's a tattoo holiday now where like people get tattoos of the number 13 on Friday the 13th. And it's become so popular that some tattoo parlors will stay open for 24 hours. And that there's this idea that if you're tattooed with the number 13, that bad luck will walk the other way because it sees that you're already cursed or some nonsense. All right. Well, this is the place I went this morning that I thought was pretty fun, which is that it's 400-year Gregorian solar cycle. Wait, what? So again, that's because in the way that we're doing leap days now, a leap day every fourth year, if the calendar year is divisible by 4, but not if it's divisible by 100, but yes, if it is also divisible by 400. And that gets you that 365.2422 day year, which is pretty close to the solar year, right? This is how the Gregorian calendar was born, to kind of reform the Julian thing. And not every country took to that at the same time. Many actually still use Julian calendar dates for Orthodox holiday calculation. Orthodox Christians do, right? Well, so this was a kind of cool thing to consider, that the kind of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday thing from one year to the next, the pattern that in a way repeats, but again, depending on the leap years, like if you have a Friday birthday this year, it'll be on Saturday next year. And then Sunday, depending on where the leap year is, it goes through like this, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, leaping Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's like pretty cool. Go check it out. But then the 100-year thing messes with it because there's not a leap day on the years divisible by 100 unless it's also divisible by 400. So for most of us, we came through a 100 divisible year, 2000, which is also divisible by 400. So we in our lives are not experiencing that shakeup. So you get these kind of 4-day, I don't know, groupings: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday. I think I messed up, but I look forward to kind of drawing that one out. There's something cool to that. Like there's some kind of cool things in the Gregorian calendar. Anyway, I can, as we did, rewind the clock 400 years from here, and we get to the truth that 400 calendar years ago in 1625, there was also a Friday the 13th in June. So when I looked that up, the first thing that came through was Charles I married a Catholic. Right? And I'm kind of ignorant in regards to history and all that. So I sent a text to Historianne, who you may know from the Gemini Rising show. I was on their show yesterday talking astro maps, by the way. And you know, I was like, what's up with this marriage? And I looked a little bit, it's like, oh wow, that whole Charles I thing, King of England, like that actually led to a kingless time, or when the monarchy died and the parliament came in, right? And so there were 11 years of Cromwell, right? And a monarchy-less England or UK or whatever we want to say. And then I was interested to read, I didn't know this either, that when Cromwell died, his son took over. It's like, that kind of feels like the monarchy with a different name. You know, but one thing that Historianne told me, who's Dr. Ann Wolke, was that, yeah, she wasn't crowned queen. So let's get a little bit more educated on this together, because, as I said, I'm ignorant. Let's go here, and I'll just search June 13th, 1625, because 400 years ago would be like, we've been repeating days of the week with calendar dates in the Gregorian calendar since 1625. You can always just rewind 400 years. Okay, so Charles I marries French princess Henrietta Maria of Canterbury. No, at Canterbury Cathedral in Canterbury, England, because not of Canterbury, she's French, right? And this is when, here we go. Maria of France. And that literally, because she was Catholic, whoa. That literally, because she's Catholic, she's not crowned. And one of the things that led to the Scottish-English Civil War, Charles I being born in Scotland and then being the King of England, right, was this fear that now the line of kings, queens would become Catholic, and yada yada yada. So, as I said before, I profess ignorance, right? But what an interesting thing to explore. Now, many of us play number games with calendar dates like June 13th, 2025, 6/13/25, 6/13, 6 plus 13, 19. That's fun because we've been spending a lot of time with 19 today. 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. 19 plus 9 is 28. 2 plus 8 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. So today's a 10 or a 1 day. You can do the math in different ways. I'm not going to do that so much right now, but you've played this game. Well, what if we add a number for Venus? So a question here, I'm sorry, for Friday. The problem is, when do you start the week? Are you a Saturday is the beginning of the week? Are you a Sunday? Kind of depends what temple you go to. Are you a Monday because you go to the temple of a square job after the weekend? Do you love football and Sunday's your church for a very different reason? What's up with you? Sorry, college football, it's a Saturday. When's the beginning of your week? Let's say it's Sunday. So let's say Sunday's a 1, Monday's 2, then Tuesday 3. Interesting, Mars. Tuesday's 3, Wednesday's 4, Thursday's 5, Venus is 6, Saturday's 7. Which was the day of rest? Saturday, right? Anyway, so yeah, let's say that Venus is 6. Venus, 666. Oh no, 66 degrees from the equator. 23.4 from the pole. Discerning Light says, I think that's why, say, I hate Mondays being pushed to work or go to school on a moon day. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that moon day in this culture, this cult, is not a day of relaxation, of self-care, which is, so much easier to do on a weekend. Winter says Saturn deserves some rest. And some people won't push elevator buttons on the Sabbath. And that begins when? At sunset. To retrograde back to that place where we were playing before. When is the beginning of the day? Yes? Anyway, if Venus was assigned a 6, Friday 6, then we would add that into this June 13th, 2025 trip. Well, let's just say we didn't worry about the year and you went day, so Friday 6 and June 6, 16, right? And so you would only get that same number on June 16th that are also Fridays. How often does that happen? And it's more than a 400-year frequency. And frankly, I'm not exactly sure. That's where I want to get into these 4-day groupings with the leap day having a skip a day. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, birthdays on the calendar, and then skipping Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm going to try that again. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday. Well, I don't know where I started. Anyway, I'll do that on my own time. I love time. But yeah, like when is the last time, we can also do it here pretty easily in Astrogold. When is the last time that hello Venus, that this calendar date was on a Friday? So we're just looking over here, June 13th, 2025, Friday, but last year Thursday, the year before Tuesday, right? So we skip Wednesday because 2024 was a leap year, and we go from that Tuesday to a Thursday, right? We can go back, so we get Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, because 2020 was a leap year, right? So we skip from 2019 Thursday to 2020 Saturday because of the leap day, right? Now, if you're born before February 28th, you're going to kind of get it not on the leap years when you skip a date. But I think we can get back here. Okay, so it was 2014. Oh, right. And we also read that in the Wikipedia page that said any common year beginning on a Thursday will have three. Wait, where anyway, I think I saw a resonance between 2014 and this year. So the point of this circle is that it doesn't take 400 years for us to have a calendar birthday on the same day of the week. I can't promise you that when I subtract 2014 from 2025 and get 11, that it's an 11-year cycle either. I can say, for the sake of the science, what happens if we go 11 years forward from 2025. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, we only have to go 6 years to get to a Friday. And that's interesting. The 6 and the 11 in the other direction being 17. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That time only 5, right? It just feels kind of inconsistent because the leap day is a 4-year thing, the week is 7 days, and all sorts of other weird stuff. We could find some pretty cool patterns there, I think, if we went and played, and I love patterns. All right, well, let me bring you back to this thing. I mean, I feel that it's fun that when I rewound 400 years, because there is this 400-year cycle where days of the weeks and calendar days are going to repeat in the Gregorian calendar, right? So I don't know. We just saw like 11 years and then 6 and then 5, like that kind of thing of the space between your calendar birthday years that are on the same day of the week, like Friday, June 13th, like that kind of rhythm or whatever. I bet you we would get some weird number sequence that adds to 400 years before it repeats. Haven't done that, obviously, but that's kind of what's clearly showing up as it must be. So we can subtract 400 years and we get to June 13th, Friday in 1625. And this is when King Charles I marries a French woman who can't even be crowned, a French princess who won't be crowned because she's Catholic and all of that fear. And it's interesting to consider Catholicism and Fridays, and it's interesting to consider that Charles III is now a king after we've had so long with a queen and other things. It's interesting to consider whether Charles III was born with a Jason hockey mask on and the like. I mean, it's interesting to consider how much of like a different church and the unwillingness to crown might have something to do with different religious rules around sexuality and passion and such, and all the different ways that the goddess has been shut down. And, part of, for me, kind of reclaiming a connection to my own virginity in regards to the sacred sexuality will have to do with the truth that I first saw boobs on Friday the 13th. When I don't know that that's true, like I have a sister and a mom and stuff. I breastfed, but just like sexually, I think there was a Duran Duran video. I saw the neighbors, the Glovinski's house for Rio or something like that, where it was like, super sexy and boobs, right? And I'm like a young dude. Maybe I'm 13. I don't know. I grew up in Vegas, so probably much younger than that. Anyway, Friday the 13th and these other horror movies, that was for many of us in my generation where we really first saw sex and passion. Now, it was always kids at summer camp, and you see boobs, and you're like, sweet, and then somebody gets killed, and there's blood all over the place. So, what does this teach us about sexuality? And what kind of imprint is in me and so many others who kind of first got turned on sensually and then murder? And literally, Winter says mind control. Yeah, and which mind? Like the brain alone up here in the Temple of Olympus? What about like lower mind? And I don't mean to say hierarchically worse. I mean to say like down in my heart mind and my body mind, right? And my like second chakra mind, in the root, right? Like think about what's gone down there. And it's just interesting to see this. I went because I've been playing with this 400 trip. And probably we should just talk about that. And we should just talk about this. And maybe storytelling hour would be more interesting. But I love to share with y'all my trip, right? In the way that the astronomy and the harmony and the geometry and the astrology and these other things all come together, right? Like storytelling hours for me, it's just an opportunity for me to share my explorations with the community and to know that I have birds of a feather in some way. So back to the textbook of the CIA, and let's check out the Friday the 13th franchise. Because what I was wondering is the first movie in 1982? No, but that the first movie would be like Charles the First, and the third movie, which was 1982, would be like Charles the Third. Sometimes we try to tie things together that maybe we should not. But why do I say all that? Because if we look at the Gregorian calendar, we're going to find that the Gregorian calendar Advent, which does all these things I was trying to describe before, was in October of 1582. And again, not everyone has taken to this. Like many still have not. It's cool to see like different calendars there listed. For example, since the First Council of Nicaea in AD 325, where all sorts of terrible and beautiful things went down, the calculation of Easter and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so, and again, Easter was slipping from the equinox because of the 365.25 days in the year was inaccurate, right? But look at what happens. Thursday, October 4th, 1582, was followed by Friday, October 15th, 1582. Okay, so we went from Thursday to Friday. So the sacred seven of Moon Day, Mars's Day, Mercury's Day, Jupiter's Day, Venus's Day, Saturn's Day, Sunday, Moon Day, etc., right? Like that was kept. But we went from October 4th to October 15th. So if your birthday was October 12th, so sorry. Right? Like I think just so many people celebrated birthdays on that October 4th or that October 15th. I mean, like the population of Earth was much smaller then, but at least in regards to the population at the time, and at least in like, Rome, where this certainly went down, and many other countries as well that were all down with the Pope. It'd be fun to do this research. And the way you do this is you call Christopher Renstrom. That's like right in the Renstrom wheelhouse. Did people who had birthdays on October 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, like all will celebrate them on October 15th or the day before, which was October 4th? And if so, was that like the greatest birthday celebration for common people ever? As far as like percentage of population goes, I'm intrigued. But what I will say this is why I was asking before, are you born before or after 1982? Because if you were like my partner, Scorpiana, like you can subtract 400 years and get to, I don't know that I'd call it like the beginning, but get to a year where you're going to see the same day of the week, same calendar date, right? So like we just did it here. We just took this date of 2025 and we subtracted 400 years. And we see June 13th, 2025 mirrors June 13th, 1625. Well, if I did this for my own nativity, that's not going to work. Whoa, what happened there? So I'm going to get to, I was born on a Friday, Venus's day, but because the sun had set, some would say I'm born on Mars's night. That's a tale for a different time. But when I rewind 400 years, I get back to 1575. And because though this was after the Council of Trent, where everybody was like, yo, we needed to do something about this calendar, but before the Gregorian calendar advent in 1582, I rewind from a Friday to a Monday. Wait, Venus and the moon. I didn't even see that yet. How fun. Winter, birds of a feather, who says, love the transmissions, organically unfolding stream of consciousness, and also trying to make sure the stream comes from somewhere and goes somewhere. Not the best at it. With its many tributaries, can it all feed into the same sea? So I'm like interested now, and there is this kind of, I don't know if it's October 4th. I guess it would be October 15th, 1982 would be the cutoff for folks who could rewind 400 Gregorian years and see a calendar date on the same day of the week. Who cares? I'm not sure that I do, but I'm intrigued by it. And then, following the synchronicities or the coincidences, it's fun to also then look at Friday the 13th, right? Now for me, Friday the 13th came before Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm not sure if that's true chronologically, and there's other films, the Halloweens and the other things where other people would have seen boobs and murder. And, maybe this is more relevant to dudes or to folks who are attracted to the female form, generally speaking. I don't know, but, I have to admit, and like probably even more in the subconscious realms than conscious, I'm trying to make that more conscious. Like, I was exposed to boobs than murder. And that's the whole thing, right? So let's look at Friday the 13th. And we get that the first release was May 9th, 1980, but the third, look, it's actually August 13th, 1982. So it's before the October 15th. So I can't do the 400-year trick there either. But let's look at May 9th, 1980 and just play with a chart. So let me just set that up before I share it. I'm going to cast 12 a.m. in Los Angeles. Well, hold on a second. I can get more specific. I'm going to look at Friday the 13th number one, and see the release date was actually May 9th, 1980. I'm going to search May 9th. I'm just wondering when the screening was. Opened theatrically on May 9th, 1980 across the United States. Let's just cast 12 p.m. I don't know what to do there. Some people went to the matinee version of boobs and murder. And Jason doing all of this because he was unloved, unheld. Right? And so I just want to bring this image back in and then retrograde all the way back to something I said very early. What if we imagined patriarchy instead of being some terrible fat king waving his greasy turkey leg scepter around and demanding executions and wars? What if we saw that one as a young boy who's never been held tenderly? And what if we brought some love and energy and caring and caress? What if we heal this thing through love, not through war? And I've turned my back on the Friday the 13th franchise for long enough that I'm not too deeply connected to the story. I'm guessing that's probably true for most people who are here live, so that I couldn't really ask for an education right now. But Winter reminds us that, yes, of course, the only way to heal is through love. And it's all you need. Okay, so I'm going to cast a chart. I certainly did not see Friday the 13th Part 1. I think actually Friday the 13th Part 3. Now that I'm thinking, it was the first Friday the 13th movie I saw. Right, at this one, I'm only 5 years old, not even 4.5 years old. So let's just look at that chart, for all of us. I cast it at 12 p.m. in LA. Leo rising with a Taurus sun, interesting. Venus. About to turn retrograde. I had to check her speed when she's this far from the sun. I can't tell if she's fast and moving towards elongation and have already been elongated and about to retrograde. And actually the latter is true. So Venus would station retrograde 15 days after this theatrical release of Friday the 13th Part 1. And that would happen, the retrograde station, at the 2nd degree of Cancer. A closing moon, Pisces 3rd quarter moon in an Aries new moon, Scorpio full moon lunation, sun opposite Uranus we see here, and then Venus Neptune. Venus, who, by the way, because she's about to station retrograde, would actually oppose Neptune 3 times. And look at the T-square then, or even this grand cross. So later on into the hours of the night, we get a Pisces moon opposing Virgo Saturn, then squaring Sagittarius Neptune, and finally squaring Gemini Venus before jumping the wall into Aries. And that T-square feels quite relevant to some of the themes I'm invoking here today. So for me, just making this more personal than perhaps I should, it's interesting to consider Friday the 13th against my own nativity. But I'm just now remembering that it was actually Friday the 13th Part 3. I can't promise this, but I am pretty sure that the first of that movie series that I saw, and I certainly have not seen them all, was Friday the 13th Part 3. Which might make some sense. I mean, gosh, at that time, I wasn't even 7 years old. So I didn't see it then. But I'm interested in casting that chart, which is August 13th, 1982, against my own nativity, and seeing if there's some opportunity for healing there. Because it feels like just where a bunch of these synchronicities have gone. August 13th, by the way, also, if the math is right, and many suggest it is not, August 13th, 3114 BC, which, by the way, wasn't a thing. But like that's when the 13 Baktun Mayan long count calendar that cycled on December solstice 2012, that's when some suggest it began. And August 13th, an intriguing date for other reasons. Like I believe it was August 13th, 2011, when Regulus processed into Virgo. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'm intrigued just instantly to see if I cast 12 p.m. for this date of Friday the 13th theatrical release to see the moon at my ascendant degree. But I think this is interesting too. A Scorpio Jupiter at that time transiting this place where, in the moment of my birth, Sun and Uranus were conjoined in the sixth, And so some of the like Scorpio trauma, but also hopefully like revolution and rebirth in this sixth is that my illness. Sometimes, yes. Thanks for spending some time with my illness today. I meant for this to be an hour, and here it is 3, and I gotta get to readings. That's what I do mostly to feed my baby. So if you want to support this work, first of all, let me just say the present of your presence is the greatest gift. But if you'd like to buy me a cup of tea or some time with a psychologist, you will find a donate link at GeminiBrett.com, where you can also join my mailing list to hear about courses that, like the Turning of the Ages course or Spawning of the Age of Aquarius course that's coming soon to a theater called you'll be able to hear about. And if you're in the Constellations community, you'll receive significant discounts. So like basically, if you sign up for these courses, you'll kind of be in Constellations for quote unquote free. Joining Constellations is another wonderful way to support myself and my beloved Scorpiana and to help us raise a child magically through jobs that we love, but that don't pay and offer 401ks and such. So I don't usually extend such a strong invitation to donate to the cause, or like so many of you have, join Constellations or book a session with me at GeminiBrett.com, or with Anna, who's here helping set me straight at AnnaZaharia.com. It would really help. Thanks again for being here. It's so nice to spend some time. All the love to you. And may your Venus moon, Friday the 13th, be one of love and cuddles and romance, consensual only, of course, and none of that hockey mask stuff. So all the boobs with none of the murder. Love. See you in space, friends.